All right, we've compiled some of the top survey highlights from Q2 2022, and I'm just going to quickly go over them. So to start off, earlier in the quarter, we saw that basically everyone owns something from Rogue. 83% said that they do. Titan and Rep were also above 50%. AbMat was about a quarter, most likely people owning the actual AbMat. And then everybody else, which was like about 20 more companies, are under 20%. We saw that nearly 2/3 of gyms answering these surveys are in the garage. So 64%, and then basement had 21%. And then you can just say other was closer to about 14%. We're seeing that a lot less people are saying that they are actually saving money by owning a home gym. So back in October 2020, 62% said they saved some money. That has steadily gone down. And in April 2022, that number was 47%. We asked, what was your top rack attachment? I'll list off the top three: spotter arms, plate storage, and then landmines was number 3. We typically saw the more basic options at the top of the list, whereas the more complicated ones were down towards the bottom, like Smith machine, globe, pull-up bar, monolift attachment, jammer arms. The top non-piece of equipment that we found was the sound system, upgraded lighting, and a shop fan. We're not too far behind. Not too much interest in mop, dehumidifier, or refrigerators. Similar to what we've seen in the past, we've noticed that we found that most people aren't the only ones working out in their home gyms. So only about 35% have one person working out, and then the other 65% have multiple. So just something to consider. Most people aren't just buying for themselves when they're doing it for their home gym. Looking at issues, so the top 3 issues did not change from when we did this last back in 2021. The number 1 issue is price of obtaining more equipment. Number 2, lack of space in the home gym. Before the last year or two, that was the number 1 issue. And then temperature control was number 3. Those 3 are the 3 biggest we're seeing by a decent amount. Next up, only 35% voted that it was either essential or important to purchase gym equipment made in your country. And the almost essential was only at about 5%, whereas 45% voted not important. And then the rest voted neutral, which is 19%. When asked where you're buying primary gym equipment, it wouldn't be a surprise if somebody said they own their bar and rack from Rogue, their bench from Rep, and then purchase dumbbells from another random company, likely Amazon, Walmart, somewhere local, etc. Most likely wherever was cheapest. The DIY interest in the home gym space, I would categorize that as average, with about 23% voting high, 43% medium, and 33% low, and 2% neutral. Something else that we did find was that most people have done at least one DIY in their home gym. And then most do not consider themselves a part of a fitness sport like CrossFit or bodybuilding or Olympic weightlifting or Strongman. So 51% voted that way. And then powerlifting was the most popular, with bodybuilding second place. And then a few more. So the functional trainer is the most popular selectorized strength machine, whereas the lap pull down is the most popular plate loaded strength machine. And there you have it. Anything there catch your eye?
No, we've reviewed this all before. I always go back. This one's like, you're going to laugh because this was the one that caught my eye. But the refrigerator in the gym not getting any love. Like, we've talked about this before. Like, more people need to put their beer fridge in their gym and hang out. And then I do love how the numbers have shown saving money in the home gym has slowly gone down. I feel like it matches the saying that's in this community that you're never done building your home gym, because once you start, it's like a bug that bites you, and you become addicted, and you always want to add new things. And so I used to be able to say, yeah, I save money in my home gym. And then I kept buying and buying and buying. And now, like, I'm to a point now, it's going to take my lifetime and my kids' lifetime when they get all my stuff when I'm long gone. And then maybe it'll save money, but, who knows? So,
my favorite part of that stat is, well, first of all, that stat's really cool. Like, that is just awesome that we've been able to track it since 2020 and see how it's changed. But I think my favorite part is that, to me, it shows that more people are seeing the value of a home gym. Like, it's not just about saving money. There's so many more benefits to owning a home gym, at least having it as an option for you, even if you're going to another gym. I think that's why I see that as such a big thing. Even as prices are rising, interest is at least staying the same, I'd say. So, yeah, I think, we were in the data all quarter, and I don't think we have too much more to discuss. Let's take it to some of the top clips from the podcast in Q2. So to start off, the Kurtlocker explains why more people should do Strongman, and he says that it is the true sport of functional fitness.
So when people watch Strongman and you're explaining these implements and things like that, like chuck pulls, Finkel fingers, things like that, it's pretty intimidating. Do you have an argument for why more people should do Strongman?
So absolutely. So one, anybody that's out there that's ever competed in any sort of event, so CrossFit, powerlifting, I've competed in events similar to those before. I've never done an official CrossFit sanctioned or an official USAPL, but I've been around those people, and there are great people that exist within those cultures. But I can tell you that the Strongman community is one of the coolest communities you'll ever be in, because so I recall several competitions that I won where the guy that I beat was yelling in my ear, literally walked just right up to me while I was doing a Conan's wheel. And my friend Brad was literally like, "Don't you dare put this down. Don't you dare let me beat you." And the guy that I beat was cheering me on. So as far as community goes, it's super welcoming. It is super intimidating too. I recall in 2017, that first competition I did, I don't think I warmed up on a single implement because these guys are freaking strong, dude. Some of these super heavyweights, they're doing warm-ups, and you kind of have to force your way in. And I guess when it's your first time, it feels very unwelcoming. But really what it is it's a bunch of very welcoming people, but they're also not going to tell you something you don't want to hear. So they're not going to boss you around or, be douchebags, I guess, but they are there to help you. So for the intimidation part, if someone's interested and they want to explore it, I would say go watch a competition and see what it's like. Hopefully you get lucky with a really good one. And to make the case for people to do it, I can tell you that if I'm near you and you need help moving, I am really good at getting really heavy things awkwardly into different vehicles. There's a lot of so people talk about functional fitness, and I kind of have a trigger point for functional fitness because I think it's mostly a load of garbage. Functional fitness is something that you train that helps you with things that you do in everyday life. And I can tell you that learning how to use leverage to pick up any implement will have direct carryover to helping you move things around the house, to, moving a refrigerator, those kind of things. It is really handy. Plus, it's really fun, and it really is just an amazing community.
Yeah, and most
I could go on. I
was just going to say that's a really interesting thought. I've never really thought about that, but it does seem like more of the strongman movements are more helpful to the everyday person than CrossFit.
Absolutely. And plus, I'm telling you, it is so much fun and it's so rewarding, and it's not a very large community. So you get to know people. So I literally had a pro strongman in here 2 days ago, and we were BSing about equipment. He was actually, so I'm staring at the log I'm working on in front of me, and he's interested in the log. But that's how cool that is that someone who's a professional level athlete just happens to live in Dayton and came and BS'd with me. And he actually gave me the sleeve extenders for that super long deadlift bar that I pulled off the other night. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. But.
I did.
Yeah, super small community, super awesome.
Would you say that most strongman want the sport to get larger or kind of stay how it is, being relatively small?
You know what? I don't know. So I'll tell you what I think. I can't speak for what other people think. I can tell you about my experiences, though. And I think it needs to grow. And I think it has been growing significantly, especially with the popularization of World's Strongest Man. And Rogue has done an amazing job putting on some really cool implements at the Arnold for everybody to see every single year. Plus, Rogue took over the World's Strongest Man implements as well. So I think it should grow. I think there's a lot of value to it growing. Really, the only detractor from it growing is the last competition I did took forever because there was like a max log, and any sort of max event takes forever because there's usually like 2 400-pound dudes that are like, oh, okay, what's your third attempt? Because this is my third attempt. Other than the competition's taking a little bit longer, I don't see any negative sides to it. Additionally, people that come into Strongman and they try to, I'm hopefully not estranging anybody, but trying to like CrossFit it to where it's like, oh, I'm going to host a Strongman event. And then the weights are so light that you end up doing like 1,000 reps of something. Those people usually end up losing, their ability to do sanctioned events. I don't know. I think there's a lot of advantages to it growing. I don't think there's really all that much disadvantage, and it's a very welcoming environment. There are some out there that you're always going to have, your remote few, your niche few that hate people, I guess. I don't know. And they're never going to accept newcomers, but I think for the most part, it'd be a good thing for it to grow.
In the next clip from the Inventors Roundtable number 2, they explain why equipment prices are going up.
All right, let's move on to the last question. So we all know that the price of gym equipment is rising. It would be really great to hear from all of you as to why that is, just so like your average consumer can understand. I'm sure you see a lot of complaints these days as to why the prices are going up.
UPS, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. Next question.
Nailed it.
No. The gym prices is going up. Really, the value of the dollar is going down. But from a fitness standpoint, materials. I think most of you guys make all of your products and source your materials in the U.S. Things are getting expensive. Raw materials changing by 10% affects, finished products by 40 or 50%. And it's getting harder and harder to get things shipped to you. Shipping delays and demand for certain things everything's changed so dramatically in the last 2 years. Cardboard is up 30% from 3 years ago. Jason, you guys can talk about the metal industry. Last time I checked, aluminum was up like 40, 50, 60, 70%, and steel was up 300 at its peak at one point in time. Gosh, Mike, that's got to affect you pretty hard too. I deal with foams, which is oil-based products. So, it's when Russia goes to war with Ukraine and gas reaches $5 or $6 a gallon, it affects foam prices dramatically. Blowing agents come out of Taiwan, which have been extraordinarily expensive to get and to mix in with foams. And the tooling that we use to make all of our aluminum molds comes from Ukraine. Haven't been able to get that for a little while. It's getting difficult out there for some products, but it's going to get worse. But luckily for us, we could control our manufacturing and our pipeline and make some changes and alter materials to be able to keep and maintain price points. And we've had, a healthy enough margin in our products because of some price changes that we've initiated 2 years back pre-pandemic to where we're able to keep the price points of our existing products the same. But you better believe it, when we are releasing new products now, we're basing it off of the modern day prices to get things, not what we're hoping it to return to 2 years from now, if that is the case. So I know companies that are pricing in additional margin just for the anticipation of things going up. We haven't been doing that, but we're aware of it.
I agree. And I think it's a lot of it's there's a shortage of supply and obviously an increase of demand because when everything stopped, there's no reserve. So like even just this aluminum material I got for the jacks I ordered like 6 weeks ago and it still was late, So I think the challenge, especially with companies like us that are smaller, make more innovative products, tend to have less margins because they're more unique. And that's been the challenge for us because we haven't increased our prices at all, but that's pretty much we're at the edge of that where we're going to have to probably start bumping the price a bit, because you can only absorb so much of that loss before your business isn't really running very efficiently.
I know, like, for a fact that we make a lot of steel products, maybe not as much as racks. We make weight plates out of steel. Back in 2020, August, I think steel was like $440 a ton for a hot rolled coil. And then in 2021, in August, a year later, it was like almost $2,000 for the same roll. So, you know, we did our best actually to not, we don't want to raise prices. I'm sure none of you guys want to raise prices. That's not like the game. I want more people to buy our stuff. Like our fractional plates, I think have been $39.99 for like 2 or 3 years. And I think cost has steadily risen. I feel like we're always trying to fight for pennies. I'm sure you guys are too. Like I can swap a coater and save 5 cents a plate, or I can swap a box material or make it thinner, make it smaller, or something like that. But the price increase is real. I guess you have to pass some on because you just can't make it as affordable. Like our 2.5s, 5s, and 10s did really well at the beginning of the pandemic. And honestly, we lost probably 80-90% of sales on that because like a lot of the overseas stuff came back. And like my prices were just high, like, and there's just no way to beat it when you're paying $2 and $3 a pound for metal. You know, you have to make money on it or else you can't sell it. So, but I've seen that across the board of like, especially wait times, like Steve mentioned, like just ordering rubber bands for our previous version of the dumbbell plates used to take 2 weeks. It's taken 8 weeks for me to get them. So I've had to use other sources, pay more money for it. Coating companies have taken weeks and weeks longer. How they make our fractional plates out of pressed metal, they ran out of like remill powder, so they had to mix it with new powder, which just cost more money. I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag of that, and the supply and demand's really affected it. But we've done our best to try to save pennies and cut costs at our level to try to keep a valuable product for the customer as best we can.
There's a lot of people that don't understand exactly what the actions of some of these extraordinarily large companies have on some of us smaller companies. Like, for instance, this is a small change that happened for a large company that affected us dramatically. The iOS 14 update that Apple initiated, where you have to initiate your privacy settings for every single app that you go into, absolutely destroyed Facebook in terms of their ability to track, to sell ads and acquire customers, which drastically affected all of us or any of you that sell on Facebook or Instagram through advertisements. You know, my cost to acquire a customer has gone up substantially since then. You know, so a little privacy act that Apple puts into place screws over Facebook, which then affects us dramatically. These large shifts between UPS charging more to the smaller companies to be able to subsidize the larger companies affects us dramatically. You know, a 30% price hike in shipping comes straight from our bottom line, because I don't know about you guys, but I absorb some of my shipping costs, you know, about 20 to 30% of it straight out of the gate. If UPS is charging me 10, I'm charging 7, just because there's a limit based off of what you're able to charge for certain things. So there's some big changes out there that are happening that we have no control over, apart from the supply chain or raw material price increases or inflation that are affecting our bottom lines dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's made great points. One point that I don't think anyone's made is something that probably affects anyone who's got high-skilled labor involved in their process. Finding people who are able to make parts, form metal, run a laser, you know, like Patrick said, you know, we're working with $1 million fiber lasers that cut this stuff, and it takes a skilled operator to make sure that they're cutting it right. You may not know, but a 10/32 hole that's going to hold a screw for UHMW, if you don't have your laser set right, it's going to shape it in a cone. And so when you go to tap that, you're not going to have threads on the back end and your screw will pull right through. Well, if you make 600 parts that way, you are effed, okay? Because those will have already gone through forming and you'll never even know until you try to attach your UHMW and things like that. And that's just like something that a knowledgeable operator wouldn't let happen. But what I've seen from all the steel cutters really is that they're having trouble keeping skilled labor employed. It's costing them more and more to keep those employees employed. We tried to go in, you know, I only have 2 employees right now. One's full-time. I pay $20 an hour starting out because I expect people to stick around and work to our level. Well, $20 an hour pay is not cheap. You know, we're not going to bring in minimum wage employees because we don't want minimum wage going into our product. But in order to do that, we have to charge more. And so, Patrick, I don't know if that's affecting you or Steve, and the guys who supply your cut steel. But that's where I've seen it most is in my sheet steel. Tube steel, you can stick that in the machine. It pretty much does its own thing. But anytime you have to go and form and you need a tradesman, I've noticed that there is a longer delay or a higher cost of doing those things right now. And I think it's greatly because of the labor pool and the overall condition of the trades in America. And I won't go on some Mike Rowe rant, but my father's been building aircraft in a factory for 40 years. So I've been seeing it my whole life. And it's a sad state right now. People aren't being encouraged to go into the trades as a viable career. And we're really seeing that impact us now, especially as inflation increases and the dollar does, lower in value.
No, Jason, I think you're spot on, man. For years through, school, and even I'm 32 years old. And so when we grew up, the thing was, hey, go to college, get a degree, and that's kind of like your road to success and doing things. I even remember in high school going to the vocational school, and they're like, hey, you guys can choose to be a welder, you can choose to be a chef, you can choose to be a woodworker. And even me and my friends were like, who the hell wants to do this? This is stupid. Like, I'm going to college, and now I'm kind of looking back at that, and some of the most successful people I know like own wood shops, own plumbing companies, and I mean, these dudes are multi millionaires. And I was like, man, 15 years ago I was laughing at that, and everybody else was. And then that's where this labor shortage is coming from. And also, like what Jason said, a lot of these positions are very skilled positions, and manufacturers, they're redlining right now. Like, a lot of them, they can't keep up with the work that's coming into them, and mostly because they have a shortage of that skilled labor. So the people they have to keep them, they have to pay them more. It's getting really competitive in that market between shops. It's a very small manufacturing world, especially here in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. One of the biggest fitness equipment manufacturers is an hour away from us, and we share some of the same vendors and manufacturers. And even it's been costing me more, because I'm not sure if many of you guys are familiar, we form our J hooks completely out of one piece. We don't weld on the cup on the backside, and that's just something that I wanted to do. I think it's a cleaner part, it's a stronger part. But I was talking with the guy who runs that operation, who helps us with our J hook, because they have that Haas machine that they can cut them. They can cut 3/8 with nitrogen. They have a very, very, very nice 12K watt Trump fiber laser that can cut that. Like, we can't cut that, at our primary shop, so they can do a better job at it. Then they have that Haas machine that taps all the holes, because they make J hooks 5,000 pairs at a time for this other company. But and that's why they have that machinery and that capability. But I'm talking to them, and they're like, hey, we have to charge you more because this is a more difficult part to make. It takes longer, and frankly, where the tolerance is that you want your products to be, like, it's difficult to hold, and there's a lot of reject parts. We had an entire run of J hooks, because they do the lefts and the rights, and then those lefts fit about, I want to say, somewhere between like a 16th and an 1/8 looser than the rights. And so it's a very clear difference. And I took them back and I measured it with calipers, and I'm like, hey, this is out of tolerance per our print. And that cost them a ton of money. And then they came back, and my J hook price went up about 7%, like per J hooks, which is a pretty big deal, because that's not factoring in the cost for the plastic. We use the transparent polycarbonate plastic, which is a petroleum-based product. We all can feel the prices at the gas pump every day. And so that cost is going up. And not to mention, a lot of these big manufacturers, for the better part of 2 years, they stopped manufacturing some of the thicker gauge plastic. Like, we use 3/8, and they were manufacturing the real thin stuff that grocery stores and all these other places are using for COVID barriers. And so that also is driving the cost up. I mean, there's so many just little things that most people don't see. They just see the price on the website, like, oh, this went up, or oh, the shipping price went up a little bit, this, that, and the other. And then they're kind of mad at us. Healthy margins make healthy companies, and we have to be profitable to continue creating products and to continue to prototype the products that we want to put out there for you guys. And not just that, but to honor our commitment. When we say we have a lifetime warranty, like, I'm expecting to be around for life so I can service that warranty, so I can help, and be there for you as support moving forward. And that's also a big part of it. Like, we can't cut our own throats just because you're uncomfortable with or people are upset about the price increase. I mean, we have to look at the big picture, and that's, all these little details just quickly add up.
So none of you would say that prices are going to be going down anytime soon?
No, I doubt it.
Not back to where they were.
No, yeah, no, dude, I look at some of my old purchase orders from 2019 and it literally makes me want to cry. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have known, like I would have just found a bunch of capital and bought an unreal amount of glory. But
These
it is
things
what it
happen
is.
all the time. You hear these stories about with your grandfather. I used to fill up my car for a nickel. No one ever expects that to ever happen again.
Yeah.
Prices change over time. It's just the prices change very quickly over a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not going back down. The question is, are they going to keep going up?
I'm assuming I'm probably the oldest guy on this podcast now, and I do remember when gas was less than $1 when I was in high school. So that was
89 cents is the lowest.
Yeah, filling up my Bronco with that big V8. I felt so good about it.
Oh man. So the real question is anybody here jumping on that EV train?
I just bought the wife a hybrid. That was our first.
Okay.
Yeah. So
halfway there.
Yeah, it's got a V6 gas motor, but it has 2 electric motors. It gets 31 miles per gallon. That was a pretty good introduction into the whole EV thing.
There you go.
Still not totally confident in batteries, 100%.
Missed the tail end of that. Sorry.
That's all right. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
I think this is probably a good place for me to drop that we are going to have one more price increase on the UPS, and we're trying to future price it so that we don't have to have any more increases. Since we came out with a product in the midst of all these price raises and like trying to gauge where the price is going to be, I think Patrick brought up a great point. We can't slit our own throat. And for a long time, this was a hobby business. And now, I have people who are relying on me for a job and things like that. And to ensure that we're going to be around for a long time to back up our lifetime guarantee, the price is going to have to go up just a little bit. And it's my commitment to make our product of the value that the price is portraying. And we intend to do that. While I hate to raise the price, I want everyone to know that they're going to be getting their money's worth still. And we'll ensure that.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up.
Now, let's take a look at the founding story of Micro Gainz from Mike, the founder.
When did you sort of think of the idea of Micro Gainz? What did you really see in the market that led you to thinking that something like micro change plates were a good idea?
So back in 2016, I was weightlifting. I was following a linear progression program, doing squats, bench, deadlift, overhead press, adding 5 pounds every other session to try to build up strength. Eventually, I plateaued on bench and overhead press. You can only add 5 pounds forever, or else you'd be bench pressing your car out there. You could add 5 every session. And I thought, it's tough to get the sets and reps that I want. It's not about the most weight you can pull or push. It's I want to get 3 sets of 5, and I was getting 4 reps, 2 reps, 3 reps, things like that. So I remember going on to Amazon and looking for fractional plates. I think I probably typed in 1.25 pound plate. There was a few options. Everything was made overseas, and I thought it was kind of expensive. So I thought, I can probably make these myself. So I actually contacted a plasma cutter, cuts steel, and he made a couple prototypes for me when I was thinking about roughly what I wanted to do. And I eventually went to a laser cutter right after that, because laser is a little more accurate than plasma. And I had 25 of each size cut for the original Micro Gainz weight plates out of steel. That was 25 quarters, halves, 3/4, and 1-pounders. We actually didn't have the 1.25 until later. So I brought all that steel back to my house, and I hung some plywood in my shed and put a bunch of nails in it. And then I hung the plates on the nails. And then I spray painted them with one of those high velocity, low pressure guns with an air tank, and then painted them black, waited a little bit, coated again, weighted it, had to flip every plate over, had to try to get inside the little corners and stuff like that. And then eventually after all that, we had, which would only be 8 sets of 8, because most people were selling them in sets of 8 with the 2/4 halves, 2 3/4, and 2 1-pounders. Came up with the name Micro Gainz, and bought some stickers and some little logo stickers and stickers that actually said what the weight was. And then we stickered them. And then I started selling on eBay in February of 2017. We sold 3 or 4 sets the entire month, maybe not even that much, maybe 2 sets. And I think I listed it on eBay as an 8-plate set. And we sold, I remember my very first sale, because we sold 2 sets to one customer. The very first sale I ever had, I was at the grocery store. I got a notification on my phone that we sold 2 sets to one customer, and I'm losing it. Oh my God, look at this, because I was just going to make it for myself and then use it, maybe sell a couple on the side. And then we sold 2 sets, and you get that instant validation feeling of like, hey, this is probably worth it. We were trying to be competitive with the other companies that were making fractional plates as far as price goes, added 1.25 after that. And then we got away from painting them myself, because like back then, 2017 February, so like we would have to paint them in the fall, because you can't really paint in the winter outside, can't paint inside, especially the way we were doing it. So I had to wait until like the spring to kind of load up on more plates. So really the idea for Micro Gainz came from a need for myself to try to lift a little bit more weight and add more incremental weight, knowing that like a 5-pound jump is not always possible depending on what you're doing. Yeah, you can make 5-pound jumps on squats or deadlifts for a long time, but eventually you're going to be able to, want to maybe use a 1.25 and go up by 2.5 or 2 or 1 pound or 3 pounds, something like that. So that's kind of how we got started.
Very cool. So you immediately thought there was a business behind your original idea, correct?
Yeah. So, and I can explain that too. So because there wasn't a lot of competition in the space, I looked around for different fractional plates. I think I saw, once again, there wasn't like a company like specializing in fractional plates. There were just like a lot of stuff. It's just like 3 or 4 of the different named companies, but they're selling the exact same plate from overseas. Or I remember going to Rogue and seeing it was like $85 for fractional plates with shipping to my house. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I remember looking at, there's a website you could check, like, and it'll give you a rough idea of how many they're selling per month. And I think I was just surprised by the amount of volume that they were doing. And I thought I can probably bite into that, especially if I can come in just underneath their price or just at their price and say, hey, ours are made in the USA. And I think that will kind of help us, that gives us like a little bit of a niche. So I realized then, especially with doing like the program I was doing, more of like a starting strength style program or strong lifts, if you've heard of those, they even recommend going up by 1.25. So I remember hearing about another program, Grayskull. There's a couple different ones, and they all suggested using fractional plates. And it was like, there wasn't great options. Like there was, you can use washers, things like that. And they wanted something that was accurate. And like what I figured, I went to all like the reviews of all these companies that were selling them. I saw what was all the bad stuff, and we fixed it. Like we made our plates calibrated. We made them so the paint didn't fleck off. We made it so it arrived nicely in like a nice box. Like we started checking off. We added a bag to it. So to try to add more value and try to capitalize on what other companies weren't doing well, so we could. And then that just kind of started to snowball into other products.
Now we'll hear the founder of Vendetta Strength talk about what it feels like to get beat to the punch on a product idea from a competitor.
Rewarding and satisfying.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to have when you talked about the leg extension leg curls. Like, what was that feeling like? You have this pretty much exact design that you've also had for over a year, and then here it is kind of like making its way on the scene.
Yeah, it definitely hits you hard. Heart kind of sunk a little bit, and you got that lump in the back of your throat, like you're frustrated, kind of just frustrated at yourself more so than anything, because you just didn't follow through with it is the biggest thing. So yeah, it's not fun seeing your designs getting out there, even if you never release them, or if you tease them, or if you have released them and someone else just steps in and starts making a copy of them. That is the biggest kick in the face to any designer and inventor out there, which I aim to stay in my lane and hopefully not step on any of those out here, especially these small companies out here like Surplus Strength and Micro Gainz and all of these dudes out here. Bridge Built, I hope to never step on any of their toes with any of my ideas, and just kind of respect each other as designers and innovators. So
yeah, I mean, you got some really cool products you're working on. I mean, if you can bring out a flywheel that's affordable.
Next up, let's listen to the founding story of the Home Gym Discord, and we'll see if there's any beef with our home gym from Reddit.
That's awesome. Are you guys able to tell the founding story of the Home Gym Discord?
Yeah, I took some notes, so I wouldn't forget too many things. I'll spare you guys some of the weirder details because it's definitely been an adventure. But as far as Discord goes, anyone can make a server. Anyone can, you could make it and have just yourself in it, or, you could have 10 people in it. You don't have to make it a thing where people join it. So we started out actually on the Home Gym subreddit, and Reddit is not very quick. You have to make sure you're refreshing the page to see new comments. And in the beginning of the pandemic, stock was nearly impossible. We did notice though that Rogue restocked every day around like 10:30 in the morning Eastern time. So we're always on there refreshing around then. And at one point, someone just said, we should make a Discord server. this one guy, which was literally, not literally his username, it was that one guy, Impulse made, hit the plus sign, made it. We all joined it. We had like 200 people going every day, 10:30, we're logging on. And, at that point, it was very much, I saw the high temp bumpers came in, and you'd post the link and people would buy it if they wanted it. You'd be tagging everyone. It was just chaos. Basically, that guy stepped down and gave this other guy, whose name was D'Amelio, and I'll try to limit the usernames I say because then it's going to sound like Game of Thrones at a certain point. He owned the server, so there's got to be one owner who kind of keeps track of the whole thing. When that happened, we grew to 11,000 people. We had bots keeping track for us and would post automatically. You could subscribe, like I'm looking for a bar, so you had the barbell notification, that kind of thing. And it was really awesome. And then even from there, we had like weird bots who'd track like PlayStations on Amazon. And at one point we were into coins from the US Mint, but I'm going too far that way. But basically we grew to 11,000 people. Everything was great. We were hosting powerlifting meets. We did charity events, this whole thing. And the guy who owned it decided to delete the whole thing. So that was, a little bit of drama there. And now we're actually rebuilding. So we're at about 2,500 people. And along the way, we, great people have kind of come in and out, came back. We've got a ton of, guys that you probably know, a ton of manufacturers on there. And like Kevin said earlier, it's great that you can, like, he literally talks to the owner of Rep One Strength to be like, hey, I think you should do this with your app, that sort of thing. And the guy's not just like, shut up, idiot. Like, they actually talk about it. And we have this great community now. And although we're a little bit smaller than we were, there's still tons of active users. I wake up in the morning and there's all these unread messages and I just don't read them, but don't worry about that part. And yeah, so the history is we kind of built this thing up from the pandemic. The need was to get stock and it kind of developed from there. Now that stock's not really a big issue, now we're more focused on actually, using the stuff that we bought for 2 years. And it's been a lot of fun through the whole process.
Yeah, I like the part, me and you have very similar notes for the founding story. I liked the part where you talked about the chaos because I think it's the closest I'll ever be to having like worked on the New York Stock Exchange. This is what it was like. Every morning people would log in about 9:30, 9:45, kind of shoot the breeze. And then 10 o'clock would hit and everybody, like, it would just kind of go silent for a little bit, waiting for that stock to hit. And as soon as it did, man, you'd have 100 people just start linking. And, there's a feature in Discord where you can tag somebody and it sends them alert. You would get, just a ton of alerts to your cell phone from somebody saying, hey, that monster bench that you wanted finally restocked, or, the calibrated plates that you've been waiting months on. I think it was the 20 kilogram plates that were out of stock forever. You could get the rest of the set, but the 20 kilograms you couldn't get. So it was just absolute chaos. But it was so much fun. I feel like I've said this so many times. I sort of missed the beginning of the pandemic. I feel like my experience was very different than normal people. I loved that period of time. It was so fun kind of building it up and just watching that environment sort of explode for the first few months.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I always felt like at like 9 to 9:30, it was like, you get like the calm before the storm. Like we're all sitting around like a campfire, like just talking. And then all of a sudden that would hit and it would just go blow up. It was awesome.
That's awesome. You guys kind of branched off from the Reddit pages. Is there any beef that exists between Reddit and Discord?
Well, I mean, officially, no. The big issue was that guy D'Amelio that deleted the server when we hit 11,000 is a mod on Discord. So I wouldn't say we don't like the subreddit. We're completely fine with them. We've actually had meetings with them. We met with Tatty Waffles, which is a moderator on Discord if you don't know, on Reddit if you don't know. And then the Gray Matter Lifting, he goes by a different username on Reddit. He's a mod there too. So we actually met with them to explain, like, listen, we're not mad at you guys. You didn't do anything. It's just this one idiot who decided to blow up the place because someone called him obtuse, and now it's this whole thing. But so no, the whole Reddit, no. I mean, I'm still on it. I'm looking at the AMAs. I'm looking at posts and whatnot. But really, just one person, and it's not because he's a mod. It's because he deleted what we worked 2 years for, but that's about it. If that makes sense. I think that's justified.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. I don't know that there's beef with anybody. I will say there's been a couple of, I don't know, awkward interactions. One thing that I found particularly interesting with that situation where, the server got, we were told it was transferred, but really it was deleted. one of the things that sort of came out of that, though, the moderators on the subreddit seemed like, the Discord's sort of its own thing. We don't really care. Luckily, it was actually Joe Gray and Dr. Tatty Waffles from the subreddit that sat down with us, and we kind of talked it through. But I just found it real interesting that there wasn't more interest, I guess, in that whole situation from their perspective. Obviously for us, getting our server blown up sucked, but yeah, it was really just Joe Gray was really the only one that would kind of talk to us directly, and then the rest of them kind of said, we don't care.
Yeah, it was a little jarring that, because we cared so much about it, and then you kind of turn around, it's like leading a parade and no one's behind you, and you're like, all right, guys, let's go. You're like, wait, where did everyone just go? What happened? Yeah. That was a little weird, but it worked out in the end.
How long ago was that?
February, right?
Yep.
Yeah, end of February.
It was a wild week. That was actually the same week that the situation in Ukraine started. So, it was tough to kind of get, unglued from the computer there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was actually my February. I'm a teacher. I think that was my February break, and I spent that entire week just getting things back up and running, and nerd alert, but it's what I did.
Next up, Preston from Texas Garage Gym Builders explains some of the trends he's seen within the home gym industry since beginning back in 2016.
Since like 2016, so
right,
about 6 years. Have there been any? You mentioned trends earlier, just like you can kind of see things come and go. But have there been any big shifts in like the home gym crowd that you've noticed, or just like seeing people's wants change in their requests for what you do?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've seen that's changed is people no longer want their home gym to be super basic or just a supplement to the gym that they go to, and Austin's a huge place for like remote work. People aren't really driving anywhere to go to work. They're at home, or they have kids and stuff. So the biggest transition that I've seen is, even though early on I was trying to sell people a lot of things that they needed, or I knew they would want down the road, they were like, no, I just need this real basic setup, to now it is getting more and more elaborate and intricate, and different companies are making some amazing things designed to be in a home. Like Bolt Fitness out of Houston has a real compact leg press, and some people love those. So I mean, we've installed those. Another trend is the guy that or woman that puts the garage gym in then becomes sort of like a host for their neighbors to come work out with them or use that space later. So it's the biggest trend that I've seen. There's a lot of products that are off and on and people argue about, and some love and don't. But it all really has come down to the fact that people don't want just a basic setup anymore. They want a gym.
Interesting.
And now Adam from Garage Gym Lab explains some of his favorite parts of the job.
What I love so much about this community is that it is so interactive, and people are truly here to support each other and want to see people succeed, want to help people, want to grow their home gyms and create this space that they can be very proud of. And with that comes a community that I found is very interactive. And that's definitely my favorite part of it. And, just creating stuff. I've always been sort of a creative mind in the sense of solving problems. I've always enjoyed writing, so I get to scratch both of those in doing what I'm doing. And it's something that I definitely enjoy about this. And then, I used to edit videos in high school for the church that I belong to. So that was always sort of fun for me. And then I went a different route in my corporate career at the time and didn't edit another video for like 15 years. So this was sort of like an entryway for me to kind of scratch that itch a little bit as well. And even though that part's not been as consistent, I still really enjoy it and look forward to getting back into it a little bit here in the next few weeks, hopefully. How about you? What do you enjoy most about it?
I think the drive to create something for this community is really high, something that they can ultimately be proud of, and something that really helps represent who they are. Say like, oh yeah, I'm part of this crowd. So I think like a few people doing that and being one of those potentially is really cool. I enjoy the strategy behind all of it. Just like running your own business is really cool. I can't really think of a better spot to be. Like, this is one of my hobbies to begin with. I started this business because it was helping me. It's like I was a new father. This home gym was really helping me. There wasn't much out there. I'm like, this is just common sense. So I think like the fact that I actually enjoy everything about it is really cool too. So, I mean, it'd be like telling someone like who grows up playing sports, you're going to go play in sports, but like, you're an adult, you don't find out this interest until you're an adult and you actually go work in that industry. I think whether you're doing it on your own or just doing it as a hobby, it's pretty cool. So,
yeah.
So I think, a lot of different things play into it.
Yeah. A lot of what you just said resonated with me. So I think we're on the same page.
Now we'll hear Gavin Laird, an equipment designer, explain what happens when his product designs are taken from somebody in another country. With the patent, like I'm guessing you had a patent for those adjusting kits, lever arms.
Design patent, yeah.
Got it. And then how does that like protect you from people in other countries?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Got it.
You have probably 10 companies now that are offering it in the United States.
Right. Yeah. I've definitely seen the product a few times already. I guess I would love to just know, how does that make you feel? And then also like, what would be the best reaction of a company who says, I do appreciate this product. I want to sell it in this country. What would you be looking for, I guess? Not saying it's going to happen.
It depends on what circumstance you're asking the question from. From their shareholders' perspective, the answer is that you should rip off the designer, get the product manufactured as cheaply as possible, and get it out the door, right? From the perspective of a designer, my ideal situation is they would contact me and say, look, legally speaking, we could give you the rough ride over this, but we'd like to acknowledge that, this concept is yours, this idea was yours. We would love to work with you on creating something along the same lines or changing it slightly for our market, or even just let's get out the door and here's a little percentage. I'd be very happy to license IP to anyone who worked in that way. It's essentially the most of my business. But I also completely understand that this is a business and the people that operate in it are not there to give cuddles to little designers working away in their cottage industries. They are there to make fantastical amounts of money for themselves and their shareholders. And, I think if you approach it with the impression that you're going to get a cuddle off of somebody, you come away in tears from this industry every day of your working life. Whereas if you just accept that this is a part of it, you will design things, they will be ripped off, they'll be copied, they'll be put out without any acknowledgement, and that's just how it is. That's fine. And on the flip side, if I see an innovative product in another market that doesn't have patent protection in the European market, I would sell it too.
Right.
What choice do I have? Yeah, and that's the brutal nature of it, but it's the absolute truth. So I've seen a lot of guys really get their ants, really, really get uptight about this kind of stuff. And I try very, very hard not to, because whether I like it or not is irrelevant. It is the situation as it is. And if you choose to be in this industry and designing products, then you have to accept that and get on with it. There is no changing it.
Really cool insights there. Okay, awesome. All right, you mentioned the bench, the lever arms. Any other products that you're really proud of?
In a similar vein, some of the stuff that from a design perspective I'm proudest of is actually where we've been approached on a consultancy basis, which means everything's NDA'd up the wazoo. We can't name the company, we can't name the products, we can't name anything. But some of the things that from a design perspective are the most challenging are when a company approaches me and says, there is this product on the market. It is selling very well. It is patent protected. Here are the utility patents. Here are the design patents. We need a product that does the same thing and escapes those patents. And from a design perspective, that is the challenge. That is almost as fulfilling as creating something from scratch. Because now you have a set of parameters that you cannot touch on, but an outcome that you must accomplish. And that can be extremely tight sometimes. It can be very, very low in the variables that you can actually mess around with. And I enjoy that work. I enjoy that kind of puzzle. So I guess I'm on both sides of the fence there. When you say, how do I feel about, patent exploitation outside of my territory, well, yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but equally, yeah, absolutely, I'll put my hand up. I make money by people coming to me and saying, we want to release this product and we can't because of a patent. How can we design around it?
Got it. Here, Jay from My Free Gym explains how he scored a Sorinex rack for an unbelievable price.
Part one, I mean, you're sitting with your Sorinex rack. You got a lot of Rogue in there. Those aren't cheap pieces. So
this one, it started as the Sorinex Apex. I mean, I think he paid $11,000 for it. And so, yeah, the parts, they add up quick. But this is one of those cases where you find a deal, you kind of build a network. A buddy of mine in Boston sent me this. He's like, check out this rack. It's in Virginia. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, let me talk to this guy. And that's kind of how a lot of these deals start. You just kind of start chatting with somebody. And you're like, I love your setup. Why'd you do this? What'd you think of this? And eventually you kind of start learning the motivation. Like, why are you selling it? Are you moving? Are you relocating? Are you doing this or that? And he's like, well, hit me with a number. I was like, all right, well, I mean, I know what you paid for it. I know you listed it for, $8,000. I can't afford that. I'm not going to drive 10 hours for $8,000. But eventually, like, if a number sticks and they have motivation, that's when you can make a deal happen. So that was a case where I got in a van. I rented a Hertz van and drove 11 hours each direction and picked up a Sorinex Apex.
I didn't realize it. Yeah, that's awesome. What'd you pay for it?
It was aggressive. What did I pay for it? So I got it for $3,000. Don't tell anybody.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of jealous listeners right now.
Yeah.
I had about $700 in travel expenses once you factor in the gas and the rental, hotel, but all in, I can't complain.
No, that's incredible.
How long ago was this?
That was last summer.
Last summer.
Yeah, I felt bad. The guy was awesome. We chatted for a long time. He was relocating, and it just didn't fit. And there's kind of a niche market for $13,000 squat racks.
Yep.
So
yeah,
sometimes you get lucky.
Very lucky. That's awesome.
Next up, Ashton from Freedom Fitness Equipment gives a State of the Union on gym equipment. All right, Ashton, this is round 2 with you. In the first one, we talked about who you are, how you got started with Freedom Fitness Equipment, and quite a bit more. So let's start out with what you are seeing these days in the world of gym equipment, any themes or characteristics of the market that you think more people should know about.
Yeah, so this is kind of my State of the Union on the gym equipment marketplace. And by the way, I've been thinking about doing this. I'm planning on doing a State of the Union YouTube video to talk a little bit more at length about the industry. But so right now, what you're seeing is what everybody else is seeing. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Prices are up on new equipment. And I've seen a couple of different things, right? I've seen prices up and prices down. I've seen prices up on the majority of equipment, but I've seen prices down on things like kettlebells, dumbbells. I've seen a lot of 89 cent, 75 cent, 99 cent deals. And I talked with the owner of Frey Fitness, and I think the reason for that is all of those container loads from China just came in. So he had a backlog of about 18 months, and now he's just trying to liquidate inventory to get some free cash flow. And I think that's what's going on. So you're going to see all of that once the inventory gets swept out. All those prices are going to go back up to $2 a pound for hex dumbbells plus. So all the prices at Walmart are going to continue to skyrocket. I just don't think that it's going to stabilize at up, so everything's going to be pricier. I warned people about this back in like the middle to the end of pandemic. Honestly, if you had bought in the middle of the pandemic or even at the end of the pandemic, you'd actually be doing better than now, which is crazy. I just saw, just as some examples. So high temps are selling on Rogue's website for $3 a pound plus. Benches are higher across the board. And I was just talking to my repair tech about this. The in-flight functional trainer cost is now $1,000 more than it was just last year, which for a functional trainer is insane. I mean, that's like an economy functional trainer. It doesn't seem like it should be that much more, but it is. In the used equipment market, I'm seeing some interesting trends. I'm seeing there's obviously there's a little bit more inventory now available in the used market just because people are slowly coming back from COVID, going back into the office and selling some of their home gym equipment. It's not as much as you would think. I don't think we're seeing this huge glut of used equipment, but we are seeing some and higher prices. Like, like an assault bike, some of the nicer ones are only $100 to $200 less than retail on some of the used market. So I think that's also a trend that's going in the wrong direction. So everything in the used market is going up. I still think best buys are in the used market anyway. You just got to, just like the pandemic, you've got to be super quick about scouring inventory, looking on Facebook Marketplace, looking on Craigslist, and just hopping on it. Because I've talked to a bunch of people that are still trying to get deals, and they're like, yeah, this guy had something up and it was gone in 15 minutes. So the demand is still there, and I don't think it's going to go away, especially as new equipment prices continue to skyrocket. People are going to be jumping into the home gym used market. I know some guys have talked to you about that as well. Yeah, I mean, buy stuff now. It sounds like a panic scenario, but that's my recommendation. Whether it's new or used, buying now is going to be the best time to buy. I would not usually ever say that. I would always say be patient, wait, things will come down. It's just not happening. So the market's the inflation's just going to absolutely take a beating. This is not a political statement. It's what's happening. Inflation is going to eat everybody alive. And I think we're going to see a lot of businesses that started up during the pandemic fail or get consolidated, which we'll talk about. Yeah, you're just going to see that continue to rise. So that's my brief opinion on what's going on right now with the State of the Union.
Yeah, you mentioned my follow-up question right there. Do you see any companies not making it past this? It seems like from my end, and a few people have reached out, like, this is a weird sale, or they are going out of business. And that's kind of the vibe it feels like for some of these companies that are like doing these garage sales or overstock sales. Is this like a last-ditch effort for some of them, do you think?
The ones that have the capital, they're fine. They're just trying to free up cash flow. I think their margins are still good enough to where they're honestly probably still making a profit or just barely making a profit, even on like a fire sale like that. The companies that are going to get hit the worst are, I'm gonna call this guy. I love this guy to death because I've talked to him before. The inventor of Micro Gainz. I think he's going to get swept up with a lot of the other companies that were created during COVID. The gentleman that created the really thin plates.
Wait It Out.
There we go. Wait It Out. There we go. And some of the other players that started creating those kinds of products during the pandemic. I think they're going to either get swept up and acquired or just completely go out of business. I just don't think. I think they're seeing that the marketplace may not be as sustainable compared to obviously the big players like Road Titan and Rep. And the niche is just going to get, unfortunately, smaller and smaller. I know the home gym market is growing. I just don't see how their marketing efforts are going to be able to stay consistent, especially with rising prices, because along with rising prices is rising production, and they're still small players without the kind of buying power as the big boys.
Would you guess more of this consolidation would be coming specifically from Rogue, or do you see some other companies kind of trying to merge?
Here's my opinion on that. So Rogue made a massive play for Ghost, and that put them in like the S tier, like super echelon for premium gym equipment. They already have some of those products, but like, in my opinion, that set them up for very custom, very nice high-end stuff that they didn't necessarily have. They started with a little bit with like the Zeus barbells and some of the customization they already have, but acquiring Ghost really put them in the market for like, you know, the Sorinex types of the Arsenal kind of like super custom build outs. And if Rep Fitness, I don't think Titan's gonna make a play for consolidation with any of these players, but if Rep Fitness doesn't do that with a company or two, I could see Rogue. At one point I would have said, I think Rep Fitness is gonna catch up, but if Rogue starts doing more of these acquisitions, I think they're gonna start pulling away. I just don't see how a company like Rep Fitness could keep up if that were the case.
Now, from the DIY Roundtable, we'll hear when should the rest of us start a DIY project or begin considering one for their home gym. And for like your average Joe, maybe think about me, to consider DIYing some gym equipment as opposed to buying.
For me, space is the biggest constraint. I'm in a tiny basement gym that's got this weird L shape. So for me, space is a major concern. Also low ceiling height. So, everyone's in a different situation. You might be in a basement, you might be in a garage. So we're all dealing with different constraints. Your constraint might be space. Your constraint might be money. So it's a different answer for everybody. But, the intersection between, space and money, that's probably going to answer the mail for most people. So, big and expensive things, I would say, is probably your best bet. Things that take up a big footprint and are expensive. That way you can kind of try before you buy and, maybe save on space. Reverse hypers, belt squats, GHDs, these type of things that I think a lot of people buy. They're very expensive. And some people regret, sacrificing that footprint and that amount of money. So those kinds of things, I think, are the things that I would recommend DIYing, at least to try before you buy. Reverse hypers, belt squats, GHDs, those kinds of things. I'd also say I recently saw the new Oculus Yoke. I think I'm saying that correctly. I think it's from Rep. It's starting at $850. And if you get all the bells and whistles, it goes up to $1,500. That, to me, is something that is very expensive. It's going to take up a ton of space. And I think most people, if they do buy it, there's not going to be a huge resale value for that because it's kind of a narrow subset of people who are going to want that. So to me, that'd be something that I would definitely make before I would buy it.
I will add to that. I've had a few yokes in here, and I did try and sell one, and it took forever.
I think, so to answer your question about, the best time for somebody to consider DIY over buying, I think I love this question because it applies to me personally. I think the best time to consider DIY is when you're trying to solve a problem. And I think, Pete, you hit on it, right? You're constrained for space, right? Or maybe resources. Those resources could be money. That's when you should, try to tap into your creativity a little bit and see what you can come up with. I think through these things for days, if not weeks sometimes. My wife will catch me spacing out, just like thinking off into the distance. And she'll say, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm running through a build. I'm trying to identify if it's going to work or if it's, what I'm going to need to achieve or if there's a part I'm going to need to buy or hunt down." But anyway, I think solving problems is going to be the best opportunity or the best starting point for anybody who wants to consider DIY over buying. Once you've got one under your belt, hopefully gets you that confidence and you keep going from there. But that's it for me. Yeah. Solving problems.
Brilliant answers. I can't really add much to that because these guys already covered everything, but I would say just try to make the first project something doable. So don't bite off more than you can chew. And like we covered pretty much like the ones that people said in the surveys that they were more likely to try. They're all the easiest ones to start with. Deadlift platform is really, it's number one for a reason. You really only have to cut the plywood and cut the stall mats and then assemble everything. So pretty low barrier to entry, pretty hard to screw it up. The next one, in my opinion, would be like the plate storage using the like the plumbing pipes or whatever, just like screw those into 2x4s and you've got vertical plate storage on the wall. And those are the kinds of things that build confidence that make you feel like, oh, this isn't so hard and I can probably try something else. So yeah, both functional, easy things to start with that won't cost you a lot of money if you screw them up or whatever, and builds confidence.
Makes sense. In regards to try before you buy, do you guys have any specific examples of things you've seen that maybe you've ended up trying to do or actually creating and then deciding to say, oh, I like this, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it? For anyone that you've seen do that?
I mean, for me, the belt squat was definitely a try before you buy. I had never even tried a belt squat prior to attempting mine, and that was inspired by Kyle releasing his video, and I thought, oh, I could do something like that, and I could probably attach it to my rack. I actually injured my back. I herniated a disc last summer, and so having any kind of like top-down compression, squatting or anything like that, or overhead presses was just a no-go for quite a while. So I thought, let me try this belt squat thing. It's going to pull from the hips, and maybe I can still get in some squats that way. And I really enjoy it. I think that that's something that when I upgrade my space, I'll definitely have a legitimately built belt squat in my gym.
Nice.
Yeah, for me personally, I use the try before you buy angle in my videos to kind of get out of trouble with some of these equipment manufacturers. But personally, I'm too damn cheap. If I've already built it, I'm not going to buy another version.
That's funny. So I can't think of any specific examples where I built something and then I bought it, but I will say that having a dedicated belt squat platform, the one that I made recently with my Titan Tower, it makes me want to get something like a Rogue Rhino later on down the road. Like, I'm not going to do it yet because this is working fine. But if I was in a place where the money wasn't an issue, then I would definitely want to upgrade, because it would be like my DIY, but just nicer quality everything. Yeah.
Next up, let's hear the birth story of the Isolator from the founder of Bulletproof Fitness. Really curious to hear just the general birth story of the Isolator. It seems like you're a very successful entrepreneur working in the training space. What did you see in the market or whatever that made you actually go for it in terms of creating a product? Because I think we both know that's not an easy task, and there's quite a bit of things that need to fall into place for it to happen.
Yeah. So mine, like I said, has been just this more of an itch and a desire to be able to offer value. When I started, like I said, I was a high school dropout. I didn't have business knowledge. So I kind of led from a what do I know? And I knew training and value. So I always put myself in a client's position to say, what would make me choose this guy? Why would I go to this park instead of somewhere else? And so that's kind of how I've always led, even as I've learned business, is how to, like, in what way can I continue to add value to just make this a better decision for somebody? And so I was always brought back to this equipment thing that nagged me, is like, dude, I know that this would be so much cooler if I could do way more of these exercises that I do with a personal client. So 10 years ago, I came up with my first ideas. And like I said, about 6 years ago, is when I had traveled different countries. I had worked with different engineers and brought these things to life. And it wasn't at all about money, because I didn't sell them. The designs that are in our gyms right now were only sold to our gyms. So it was not a profit model at all. It was simply a value model. And because it's something I wanted to do. This company is a huge passion project for me over anything. This means much more about developing the stuff I want to develop than making money. But it was similar in concept with the gyms. Was I really just want to create this stuff because I want to be proud of the model that I created. I want to be able to do stuff that I think is better. If I sit with a bunch of people and they introduce me to their friend and go, is yours the best group training space? I want to be able to say, yeah, and not say it just because I'm biased, but be able to say, look, I can do X, Y, and Z that nobody else is doing. I went across the country and I created and patented equipment that I made no money on, simply to be able to do it, to offer value. And so that's really where it started. I have a personal home gym that's about 2,000 square feet, and it looks like a kind of a small commercial gym. And as I would post that on my Instagram, I started getting a lot of people questioning because I have those few pieces that I originally designed in my home gym. So a bunch of people were hitting me up saying, why don't you sell that? Why don't you sell that? And this whole garage gym space didn't exist in 2007. Like, people had garage gyms, but the community wasn't like this. I didn't honestly even know about this community until I started creating this piece. And now I'm like, I love it. Everybody, they're all my people. They're like, dude, I'll take a 2x4 and a piece of conduit and do this. Like, that's been me forever. So that was kind of the idea, was like, all right, there's this need, let's create something. And then people started showing me, like, dude, forget the money part of it. You're selfishly keeping this. The same need that you had, we all want this. We want this stuff that you're creating. So that honestly started in organic conversations through my personal Instagram. And it just kind of made me get to the point to go, you know what, this next stuff that I drop, I'm going to drop it to the public. And if everybody else is wanting this as bad as I've wanted it for 15 years, then I think this would be a cool venture to try to give it to everybody.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like you said, there is a really creative home gym group out there. They live on Instagram and Reddit and Discord. And if you're not there, you probably never heard of them. And that group probably grew 10x during COVID. It was really interesting to post your product and everybody just goes crazy. I think a lot of people are like, I don't trust this. I've never heard of them, because you've seen those companies that kind of just create something and go away. So I'd be curious to hear what are some of the primary questions and just general feedback you've received so far in terms of releasing the product kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I even appreciate you guys had shared some of the stuff early on. Obviously not like advocating for it, but just even showing it was really cool to me.
Right.
And I've told other people, my franchisees and everybody else, honestly, at this point, if the company didn't go anywhere after this product and it just made these people happy and we launched this, I'd feel fulfilled because the feedback I've gotten has been so great. I felt crazy because my franchisees love fitness, but they haven't been doing it as long as me. They don't have the same passion for equipment. So these years that I talk about the equipment on all these company calls, I can feel the vibe of them kind of like, this dude's just lost his mind with all this equipment stuff. Like, he's constantly talking about it. So they appreciate it, but it's not the same passion. And I feel like this group of people, they're like the same thing. They're like, I've been waiting for this my whole life. And I'm like, me too. That's why I created it. So the feedback has been really good. But like you said, I think it's justly met with skepticism because they don't know who I am. They don't know who the brand is. They don't know what's going on with it. So I expected that. And it's led us to an interesting place now because the way that I see it is, I'm going to launch something and it's going to do okay pre-sale, which it's done better than I expected pre-sale. But what's going to really catch fire is depending on what people get when they put it in their hands. They're going to review it. They're going to talk about it. And if it's crap, it's crap. If it's not, it's going to blow up. And so people have hit me up with almost added skepticism because of the things that we keep adding to it, or like the fact that we dropped our price. Within 20 minutes of launching it, the feedback was like, hey, this price is too high for us. We can't afford it. It wasn't that I didn't feel that it was warranted. It was normal margins for our type of business. It wasn't that I was overpricing it. But the reality is, if that's what they were saying, and it wasn't just we think it's too much, but we can't afford this, that doesn't do me any good. I need to be able to get it into the hands of the people that need to use it. So within 20 minutes, my sister, who's the VP of the company, pulled the car over. We were on a road trip and we were on the phone with the manufacturer. What if we order another container? What if we do this? How can we get the price down? And so we've continued doing that. We added an angled bumper to be able to start it under a different level of resistance. And so people are hitting me up like, what's the catch? Like, you guys are continuing to add stuff, but you're not charging more. And that almost makes us worry. Like, is this ever going to arrive? Are you just trying to get people to place an order? And the reality to me is common sense is if somebody orders this unit and it doesn't have X, Y, and Z that's going to make it great, they're not going to talk about it as being great. So even if I don't make money on these pre-sale items, but I get it in the hands of people and they're like, dude, this thing kills it. This is what I've always wanted. I'll make up for it in the next 10 years of sales.
Yeah, I think you're right. As I mentioned, like, this is one of those things where people have never had their hands on. But if you get a few positive reviews out there, I do think you're right. I think it's going to take off. I don't think there's anything as versatile as what you brought to the market. And that's exactly what people want. They want a complete gym within their power rack,
Yep.
And I think it's crazy that you created something like this. We have two more. Next up, we have Chad Weslety Smith explaining what he thinks about more tech coming into the strength training space.
Right. Well, I mean, I love the app. If you could get it to pair with my Whoop, that would be incredible, or something like that. Hope that's kind of in the 5-year kind of plan. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what you guys have. And then the last question I have here is just, obviously, you got into the tech scene relatively early in terms of the fitness, at least from my viewing. A lot more emphasis on it right now. It seems like a lot more players are in it. It's integrated into a lot of machines now. What's your take on tech entering the strength training space?
Yeah, it's has great potential, obviously, to give athletes and coaches a lot of objective feedback on what they're doing, how well it's working. If the coach or athlete knows what to do with that information, it's very powerful. There's a lot of situations where I think people are just getting a ton of information and not really doing much with it, or being overwhelmed by the amount of information that they're kind of forgetting that an important part of this is training hard. And it gets too consumed in what an HRV score or readiness score is for the day, and the watch or device or app or whatever is telling them to take an easy day, and they don't feel like that's warranted. And we get into things that are leading indicators and lagging indicators, and that having, if we were thinking in terms of like a red, yellow, green, like a go, slow down, stop situation, that some people think that they're always supposed to be in green, and that's not how training is designed. Fatigue is a part of the the process, and as we get into functional overreaching and stuff like that, you got to go into yellows, and there might be a time where you're going to go into red, and it's by design. And as long as you have the context of that, it can be really helpful. So, I think it's technology in the hands of someone who knows what to do with the information they're being provided is going to really be able to accelerate the quality of work being done. I'm excited for like a situation like we're in with Juggernaut AI. Like I said, 10,000 active users means that as we look at the data of what volume of training people are doing, what exercises they're doing, and that they're having the most success with, it's so exponentially beyond what is done in most research situations where you read some of those papers and it'll be like 16 trained males kind of thing, and what they constitute as trained is a pretty low level. And it's like, well, how much can you really get from 16 people? We could do that with 1,600 people. We could do it with 10,000 people, with so much of this information to make much more powerful conclusions from what's being done. So I'm excited, as we add to our team and can get even more into the data science space of things to be able to provide some of that stuff.
I come from a marketing analyst type role and worked with some data scientists, and the stuff that they can do is pretty remarkable. And I imagine that they could do some pretty cool stuff with your data.
And finally, here is the story of how the stealth leg press ended up on Titan's website.
The very first invention was the stealth leg press. That was the first meaningful, something that I actually patented and spent the time and money. I've been inventing stuff. I actually have some really crazy inventions that are being prototyped.
While we're on that subject, since we have it here as a question we wanted to ask, can you just tell the story of the stealth leg press?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. And I'll tell you guys, like I said, I haven't really told anyone this side of it. And it's pretty funny. I don't think they'll love it or appreciate it as much, but it is what it is. So I'll get into that. But the stealth leg press, we owned a small studio and we just didn't have much room. And I was like, I want a leg press, but they take up so much damn room and they're really expensive. So I was like, I can definitely build something that will serve the purpose and just cost a lot less. So I built a prototype, and this prototype, which is kind of funny, it looked exactly like the one that Titan Fitness first came out with. I don't know if you guys have seen that original leg press, and it didn't work at all. It was just a pendulum. I'm like, okay, this sucked. My idea didn't work, but I just went and hacked it up and I changed the angles. I was just thinking, how do I make this actually feel like I'm moving weight and fight gravity? So I changed all the angles, and I finally, after a lot of iterations, got it right. And it was like, holy shit, this works really good. But it's just funny that Titans, the first one they came out with it looked just like my crappy prototype that didn't work. So eventually I patented it and just showed a couple people. I made a little hype video, and Legend Fitness got a hold of me and said, hey, this is awesome, you want to make this? So I went down to Knoxville, got to meet all those guys, toured the factory, and they started manufacturing it. So they just licensed it. So they're selling it for a while, but the price point was pretty high. It's super heavy duty, it's got bearings, it's awesome, but I think it's at least $1,300. And then they're selling that, it's doing great, and all of a sudden, I think someone sends me a picture of Titan Fitness, and they're selling my leg press essentially, but it was just a really, really crappy version. And I was like, well, they're infringing on my patent because it is the same thing. So actually, this is the part that's kind of funny because just how I went about it. Because normally a patent, they're really almost kind of worthless in a lot of ways unless you have something that's really, it's worth a lot. Because you have to actually fight to protect it, and it's expensive. So most little guys like myself, they're not going to do that. So I was like, okay, I got to think outside the box here. So I started writing an email to Titan saying, hey, I have an attorney. My dad is actually a patent attorney, which he's not. But I just wanted to show them that I can fight this as long as you want to fight it. It's not going to cost me anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, my dad's a patent attorney. You guys are clearly infringing on the patent. And, oh, by the way, the version that you actually made that's infringing sucks. So I actually sent them video and all the stuff showing, hey, this is the actual version. I can give you the plans for it, all the CAD models, all this stuff. And if you actually want to sell one that actually works right, I will license it to you. And you can do the right thing and not just infringe on the patent. And we don't have to get attorneys involved. And I think they understood that they would sell a lot more of them anyways, and it would actually work. But it's just, I kind of bluffed my way through it, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, it was just kind of typical, big business, just trying to push the little guy aside, but it worked. So here we are. They are selling it. They're selling a ton of them.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, lots and lots.
That's incredible. That's an awesome, incredible story.
No one really knows that because I don't really want to bash on a business that I'm working with, Titan's great. They do have good price point.
It turned out well, yeah.
But that was my personal side of it where I just I have to do something. And that's how I went about it. And it tended to work out. So, yeah, I thought it was kind of funny.
There it is.